Live look at the Dow right here, just down about 80 points in the red as we continue on here on News Now and around the globe on coronavirusnow.com. I'm your host, Mike Page. Always great to be here with you. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to always bring you these top stories from around the country. And while I was just showing the Dow, and when you think about that, obviously you think about really the money in your accounts, the money that you're investing, or maybe the lack thereof right now with this pandemic that is going on. So where do we all stand right now with this COVID-19 pandemic? Well, now it's time for Money Matters right here on News Now, and we have a special segment here because our very own Renee Nelson from AZAM, you know, here locally here in Phoenix, she talked to Rachel Cruze, who is also the daughter of the financial guru Dave Ramsey, and they talked about everything about what you should be doing and maybe not doing during this pandemic, according with your Money Matters. Here we go.
Renee Nelson, Fox 10 in Phoenix, Arizona. The rapid spread of the coronavirus and the changes it made caught most people completely off guard. It changed everything so quickly that if you weren't prepared for a financial emergency, you may be dealing with one now. So we're talking about the best financial moves that you can make as we emerge from this pandemic. And today we're talking with Rachel Cruze, personal finance expert with Ramsey Solutions. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you. First I want to recognize that not everyone is in the same financial boat. Some people are doing just fine. We're doing fine. We're prepared. And some, of course, are in the opposite. But then there's those in between. So let's kind of run through those groups of people. Let's start with the third group. Group number 3, they were doing financially well, but maybe are still worried at this point.
Yes, for sure. So this group is one, they haven't lost their paycheck, they're funding retirement, maybe they're even out of debt, they have an emergency fund, like the prime place to be right now, but they're just overcome with fear. And fear is a terrible financial advisor. So for this group, I would say do not pull your money out of the market. A lot of people are doing that because they're freaked out. Keep it in. Remember, that's your long-term gain is having your money in the market, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep budgeting, keep being specific with where your money's going. So with this group, again, you just have to watch out. Don't let the fear overtake you.
Well, and we're seeing so many of those fluctuations in the market. You know, we've seen the markets go down, scaring a lot of investors, but we've seen them come right back up and rebound. So your general advice is just to stay the course then.
It is. And, you know, I believe in the American economy enough to know that we're going to come out of this. We came out of 08. We came out of September 11th, Y2K. You look down, and it's strong. And again, your investments, specifically with retirement, it's for the long-term gain. And so for some people, you still have years, even decades. So keep it in. And again, like you're seeing, we're seeing an uptick right now, which is encouraging. So as more states open it back up, more people get back to work, we'll see the economy come back.
And you're saying it's okay to be generous during this time as well.
Yes, for this group especially, because you're not stressed, you're not paycheck to paycheck. So yeah, if there is times with your time or even your money to go and be generous to those around you, help out a family member if they need it or a neighbor. This is really a time where you are financially secure, but others are very insecure. So help them during this time.
And we're not just talking about donating money, though, either. We're talking about, just helping local businesses.
Absolutely. If you can go out and support local businesses, my husband and I did this even for restaurants. You know, we'd get to go orders from our favorite restaurant that was local, because you want to be able to support that. Now, again, making sure that you are foundationally financially good. But when you can do that outpour of supporting things like businesses or families, 100% do that.
Yeah, so keep shopping, keep spending, because that definitely helps your community. Should you be saving more money than usual if you're in this group, maybe for some potential opportunities?
Well, you know what? I would say if you are in a position where you don't have debt and you have a fully funded emergency fund, you can actually invest more. The market still is not where it was back in February. So technically, it's still a little on sale. So go ahead and you can invest some more, or even look just to throw money in to pay off the house. But I would continue on your financial plan, especially if you're in this boat. But if you do not have cash in the bank, if you don't have 3 to 6 months of expenses, or maybe you still do have some credit card debt or the car loan, then use some of that income you still have coming in to go ahead and pay that off. Get a bunch of cash in the bank, 3 to 6 months of expenses, and then you can look to invest more.
Got it. Got it. Is there anything that you should or shouldn't do in that group in terms of where you're pulling money from? I know you said, don't pull money out of the stock market, but there's a great opportunity right now to refinance. Is it a good opportunity then to take money out, maybe get rid of some of those debts?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely get out of debt. And I recommend getting out of debt, smallest amount to largest amount, no matter which group we're talking about this morning. Everyone needs to do that to focus on paying off that debt. But refinancing, like you said, that's a great option right now. I mean, some interest rates are as low as 3%, even lower for a 15-year fixed rate. So if you don't have a great mortgage right now, if it's a 30-year or something like that, I always recommend getting a 15-year. So go and refinance, and you'll save a lot of money doing that in the long run.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we're also talking about this group kind of in the middle. Now, maybe you were gainfully employed, but you're concerned that you might actually lose your job. What do you do there?
Yes, so people in this group is that maybe you're still making an income, maybe your hours have been somewhat cut, but you're nervous saying, oh, wow, my industry could be completely gone and I can really lose my job. So if that's the case, I want you to focus on facts, not fear. So if you really are a fact that your company is going to possibly be laying off people in the next coming month, or maybe you're in an industry that's really struggling, the future is uncertain, not just because of my fear, but because of the facts, then yes, I would definitely say, keep doing what you're doing with your money. But when that fact happens that, yeah, I am going to be let go in the near future, then you can pause paying off debt and stockpile cash.
Okay, and a lot of people in this group we were talking about can fall into that paycheck to paycheck. And we're also talking about every single income level. This doesn't necessarily mean just a lower income. This can be just about every income. What's the difference there for someone who makes maybe even a higher income, but also has much higher liabilities at the same time?
For sure. Well, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck before the pandemic happened. So now it's probably a whole lot more. So for most Americans, you're making an income and you just go right back out and spend it. And so you have to be very, very purposeful with where your money's going. And so for this group, especially, if you still have debt, you still have that level of risk in your life. And so go ahead and start eliminating that. But again, if you know your income is going to be cut or you see a potential job loss, then pause everything. Pay minimum payments on your debt, but stockpile that money. Because yeah, if you are in a higher income bracket, that doesn't mean that's all cash coming in. Because sometimes when people get a raise or you get a higher income, your lifestyle increases as well. And that's been happening. So if that's the case, you need to pause everything, cut some stuff out, and really focus on staying current right now.
And how do you know, how do you know what are the things that you pay first? If you're in that, maybe even mid-range to even higher level income, but you are a paycheck to paycheck person, how do you know what to pay first?
So I always recommend doing a budget. Okay, so that means your income coming in is assigned, every dollar is assigned to a category. And so I always focus on your four walls, and it doesn't matter your income or not, but always focusing on that, which is your food, shelter, utilities, and transportation. So making sure that those are the first things that are covered. And then anything past that are really your needs at that point. And so you can look to say, okay, what else do I really want to stay current on? Probably insurance, probably, other things like that you see, wow, I really need to stay current. So you have to list out and you have to prioritize during this time. Again, especially if income is in question, that's the big thing here. But if you're in an industry that you're like, you know what, I'm fine. I talked to a guy, he's a FedEx driver and his wife's a teacher. They're going to be okay. They're probably not going to be losing their jobs anytime soon. So if that's the case, then you need to budget, though, no matter who you are, and be very, very purposeful and say, okay, hey, this is where every single dollar is going. And it's amazing. People that have never budgeted before, for the first time, they're realizing, wow, we have kind of been sloppy with our finances. We really need to tighten up. And the budget is the way to do that. And people that have never lived on a budget and then they say they feel like they got a raise because you don't realize how much money is leaving you.
Yeah, it really makes sense to do that. When you fall into kind of this middle group, though, maybe one of you has lost your job and the other one is still getting an income, but your liabilities still remain high. When do you know that you're in trouble? I mean, when is it where you start to need to maybe even considering maybe filing for protection or anything like that?
Yeah, if you're in a point, though, that you cannot make your bills, your current bills, then you know that you needed that second income coming in. If that second income is lost, then you need to replace that money. I look at money, it flows two ways. It flows in and it flows out. So if some money flowing in has stopped, but all the money is still flowing out and you need more money to flow out than it's coming in, then that's a simple math problem. You have to bring in that income. So maybe for a short period of time, that person goes and gets a part-time job. Or you look at all of your expenses and you say, you know what? We can actually cut a lot of things that were in our lifestyle before. We're going to cut because we have one less income coming in, and you're going to make those sacrifices, but they're for the short term. And I always say that during this crazy time, there will be sacrifices to your lifestyle, even possibly your job, but it's for the short term. So buckle down and do what you have to do so that you're not late or you get penalties on some of these bills, because there are some industries that are giving grace periods. So some mortgages are doing forbearance, utility companies are giving grace periods. So if you need to take that grace period, you can. But if you can stay current on your bills, stay current. But the moment you start getting behind is the moment that red flag is raised.
And I know that this is definitely personal preference, but coming from a financial expert, what do you start to categorize as a need versus a want when you're talking about the things you have to pay versus the things maybe you think you have to pay?
Yes. So really your needs, like I said earlier, it's your food, your shelter, so rent or mortgage, utilities, and transportation. Making sure that the car stays current. If you have a loan on it, gas can go in the car so you can get to work. I mean, those are your 4 main needs. So what I see is people don't prioritize. They go and pay their MasterCard bill, but they don't have food to put on the table. And I'm like, no, your priorities have to be this. Debt and all of that, I want you to stay current. I want you to get out. But if you're in a position that you're in dire straits right now, that's not your priority. Your priority are those 4 walls specifically.
And dire straits, we're talking about that last group of people, and these people are really hurting right now. We've seen, really high numbers of unemployment, and a lot of people are suffering. So maybe you're in that group, which we're referring to as group number 1. You lost your job, you lost your income. What do you do at this point?
Yeah, so this is scary. About 34 million Americans are filed for unemployment. It may have been up to 36 even last I checked. But yeah, millions and millions of Americans are struggling right now. And so what you have to understand, again, is making sure those 4 walls are covered, just like we talked about. If you have any money saved, dipping into an emergency fund if you have it, and then looking to replace your income. So you can always file for unemployment, but we've been hearing disaster stories about people not able to even apply for it, right? Whether the phone line's busy, they're not getting an application. And so there's a case that if you get unemployment, I still look at that as a temporary Band-Aid, because I want you to go get a job and replace that other income. Because while some industries are completely gone, there are others that are absolutely booming right now, and they're looking to hire. So there is an opportunity for you to get work, but it may not be the job you ever dreamed you would have. It may not be the job that you're excited to have forever. But again, this is temporary. And maybe you even piece together 1 or 2 of these opportunities to make that income so that you have something coming in for the time being.
Well, that makes sense. What about borrowing? And what about borrowing from family and friends?
So I'm a no debt girl, if you haven't realized. So, I mean, whatever you can do to stay out of debt. And listen, if a family or friend is offering to help you during this time because they know you're struggling, I would recommend that they do it as a gift. Because the moment you put debt into the picture within a friendship or a family, the dynamics change completely. And so what I would say is, yeah, if they're able to offer it as a gift, that's great. If not, again, you can still find work. And I know it's tough. I know it's so easier said than done at this time, but there is an opportunity to take that money. So if anything, I would take the penalty if I have to delay some bills if I need to go out and earn that extra money to then pay it.
Well, this is another hard question, and definitely a personal decision for all households. But, sometimes you have, multiple adults in the household, but only one of them is working, and one of them may be out of a job right now. Who do you suggest fills in that gap? Is it everyone? Is it, what is your suggestion?
Well, at a time like this, especially this group, it's a crisis moment, right? If you have lost your job and you don't have an income coming in, I think it's all hands on deck. Figuring out what life is going to look like in the short term to bring some money in. So sure, the person working outside the home is probably going to have the credentials. They're going to have the resume to go get another job. So that's easier. So say you have a wife that stays at home. She's a stay-at-home mom. And again, personal decision. But this can be a time to bring in some money if you need it to do something. Zoom is hiring online. There's tutoring companies hiring online. There are a lot of companies that you can do from home. So even if you can get a couple of hours in just to make that income in that dire strait situation, I would do it. I mean, I look at this again, all hands on deck. We have to keep the roof over our head. We got to put food on the table. And so we have to figure out something, a temporary Band-Aid during this time.
Yeah, I like how you say that, all hands on deck right now, because you could even, say that income is specifically going to put food on the table or make sure the lights stay on. So probably a good time to at least have that funneling to those direct needs.
That's exactly right. And, I have 2 good friends who stay at home with their kids. And one of the husbands lost his job. And she said, you know what, my part-time job now is to figure out how to cut the grocery bill, and she just got really, really intentional. And she kind of made that her job of cutting all the bills in the household. And I was like, that's a gift. So again, it may not be that you're bringing outside income, but you're finding a way to cut the expenses that are leaving.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of people in this group also ask about those stimulus checks. I get a lot of messages about that. When are those stimulus checks going to come? Obviously, we cannot answer for exactly the timing of the federal government, but we certainly can address what you should do if you haven't gotten that stimulus check yet, or maybe you're sitting on it wanting to spend it wisely.
Yes, so that's one thing I've been hearing that people ask, well, should I spend my stimulus check to help stimulate the economy? But I would say you need to make sure that your financial foundation is sturdy, meaning use that check if you're in dire straits to pay the mortgage or to put food on the table, keep the lights on. Use that for your bills. Maybe if you still have an income coming in and you got this check, maybe you just set it aside for savings. Or if you're doing really well financially and this really hasn't shooken you, really bad, then you could take that and say, hey, maybe I do want to go spend it somewhere. But don't automatically assume that you need to go and spend this money to help stimulate the economy, like some people are saying. Making sure that your financial foundation is strong under you is priority number one.
Well, and Rachel, whether you fall into one of these three groups, somewhere outside or, somewhere in the middle, we're all going to emerge from this, and we all need to do the best that we can with our financial future. So we certainly have some ways that we can make our better financial moves. And you talked about creating a budget. Why is that so important?
It is. So living on a budget is just being very, very intentional with where your money's going. I think so many people get around to tax season, April 15th or now July 15th this year, and you look and you say, where did all the money go? What happened? Because you don't realize what you're spending your money on. And so to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be very purposeful with where every single dollar is going. And zero-based budgeting is the best way to do it. That's your income minus all of your expenses equals zero. So every dollar coming in is assigned to a category. And this really just gives you the control over your income and what to do instead of just kind of going through the week not knowing or getting to the grocery store and thinking, is this okay? Is this amount too much? All of those questions are answered with the budget because you're saying exactly where the money is going. And if you've never done a budget before, give yourself 90 days for it to work. It will take about 3 months to get it perfect. And even then, it's not perfect, but it takes about 90 days for your budget to work if you've never done one. So give yourself grace, persevere through the times that it's hard. But I promise it's amazing. The control you have over your money when you do a budget is unlike anything else.
Well, and it's fascinating and also sometimes startling to see it tangibly, exactly where all of those dollars go. So that can be quite frightening when you discover maybe your coffee habit.
It is. There's an accountability that happens with the budget that you think, oh, wow, those Target runs weren't just buying $5 mascara. I end up spending a whole lot more. So, yeah, you really do see where your spending habits are. But that's the great thing is you're able to still spend in some areas you want to spend, but you can cut back in the times that you need to cut back.
Yeah, that makes sense. And especially you don't want to be putting those any of those shopping trips or anything onto credit cards. So not having debt is a big one.
Yes, getting out of debt and staying out of debt is huge. When you can own your income, when your income comes in and you get to decide what to do with it, and it's not going out 18 different directions to student loans and car loans and credit cards, it's amazing not only the wealth that you can build, but what my friend Chris Hogan says is that debt's a thief. It steals not just your income, but it steals your sleep at night. It steals your peace of mind. And so there is a financial benefit of living debt-free, but there's also an emotional element as well. There's that benefit that you don't owe anyone anything, and suddenly your life opens up and you have choices and you have options. So again, getting out of debt most effectively, do it smallest debt to largest debts, not including the mortgage, and start working to pay that off. And at Ramsey Solutions, we find that people are getting out of debt completely in 18 to 24 months using that debt snowball process. And so it is, there's a power in living debt-free. And those families that have done it, we've helped millions of people get out of debt. And it's incredible when this pandemic hit and those families that had gotten out of debt and have an emergency fund in place, they take on this pandemic a whole lot different than those people that are still living paycheck to paycheck. So if you are paycheck to paycheck, you do have debt, let this be a moment where it's kind of your wake-up call where you say, I want to be different. I want to live my life financially so different coming out of this that I will never find myself in this position where I'm stressed out and I'm freaked out because I don't have an income, but instead you have a plan.
It is a true story that you're telling, because if you've lived on both sides of this fence, I love this saying, and you shared this with us, but saying that debt will keep you paying for your past when you should be focused on your future. So many people do that to maintain a lifestyle that they think is necessary, but the mental health cost is huge.
It is, yes. It's like living life in a rearview mirror, and you're paying for stuff that you're probably not even using right now. I mean, I know we all have done this. You walk in, you see, an item you want, whether it's clothing, an electronic, and you say, "Oh wow, I really want this. If I get this, I'll be happy. Everything will be better." And we end up being a rat in a wheel in America where we run, and our contentment is based on the stuff that we have. And for a lot of people, they go into debt for that stuff. And at the end of the day, it's not going to make you happy. It's not going to fulfill you. And we are a lot of Americans with a house full of a bunch of stuff that we don't use anymore, we don't need. And so really, really looking at your priorities. And I think getting out of debt, there's a contentment issue too that helps when you say, you know what, I'm going to live a little bit simpler for right now. For the power to get out of debt. There is so much there. And I'm not against stuff. I love stuff. So I always say it's okay to have nice stuff. Just don't let your nice stuff have you. And it has you when you don't own it and the bank owns it instead.
I feel like we have to kind of section out a small section of people that fall sort of within this group as well. And those are the ones that really didn't intend on being in debt, didn't accumulate stuff. That really wasn't their motivation, but came into some hard times. Maybe it had to do with illness or some other type of event in their families. How do you know how to get out of that and when to walk away from the debt if you can?
For sure, yes. I mean, there's been a lot of people, you're right, that are in debt, not for their own doing, really, but because they felt like that was the only way. And so my encouragement for those people is to say, I'm going to live a life where no matter what, I'm not going in. And so you kind of draw that line in the sand. But there are hard times, like you're saying, medical, for instance. I mean, that's the #1 reason for bankruptcy in America today are medical bills. And so there are ways with those big chunks of debt, besides student loans, but other debt, that you can call your creditors, you can call the hospitals, you can do things to lower that bill and really work. But sometimes it's that huge mountain that you have to climb. But at the end of it, you'll realize, and a lot of people have said this, that after they got over it and they paid it off, they got it out of their life, that they always are going to back up and have a plan and have savings in the bank. So when stuff like this happens, if you do fall on hard times, you do lose a job, you have a plan for it. Because the hard thing about life is it's not if it's going to rain, it's when it's going to rain. And so you have to be prepared for those times.
Well, and now we have to be prepared for the not if, but maybe when things like a pandemic. So an emergency fund, that's when that really comes into play.
That's right. Saving up for the future is something that is so key. And so we can talk about long-term savings like investing in retirement, but those short-term savings of having that emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses in the bank after you pay off debt is a huge next step in your financial journey. Because when you have that, again, you have choices back. You have freedom back in your life that if something happens, like a pandemic, who knew if you told us in January that this was going to take us down? Like no one knew that. But those people that really do, they have that savings in place. Your whole countenance changes, the whole outlook on life changes. And so my encouragement, again, for people that don't have that emergency fund is to get out of debt and then continue to make sacrifices on your lifestyle so that you can put that money in the bank. Having cash in the bank, an emergency fund, I look at it as insurance. Like it's there for you when you need it. And times like this is when we really do need it.
How do you know when you should be paying off credit card debt or putting it more into your 401k, especially when you've got an employer match there? Is it dollar for dollar?
You know what? I always say if you have debt, pause your retirement and throw everything at the debt. And so that cringes a lot of people, especially you math people out there. They're like, no, I want to fund my retirement. But I've found that when you are focused on one thing, you see progress so much faster. So we actually encourage you to pause retirement, go ahead and get completely out of debt, get that emergency fund, and then fund 15% of your income into retirement. So taking that employer match, if you have a 401k or a 403b, and even a Roth IRA, open up another retirement vehicle if you need it to get that 15% of your income going into the long term.
So many important things that we've learned today, definitely. So creating that budget, a really important thing to do and eye-opening as well. Making sure that we don't get into debt or getting out of it as soon as possible and really focusing on that and building that emergency fund. We could all use an emergency fund right now, especially people that fall into that place of being unemployed right now. So where can people go to get some more information and resources?
Yes, if you go to daveramsey.com/hope, we actually have a 14-day free trial of Financial Peace University. That's our 9-lesson financial class. So you can just binge that instead of binging Netflix for the next couple of nights and really learn how to control your money, because there is still hope out there. So whether you've lost your job and you're really struggling, maybe you haven't and fear has just overtaken you, no matter where you are, just let this be a moment where you say, you know what, I can still choose to take control of my money. And also, I'm going to let this be a wake-up call that I'm going to do something different with my money coming out of this. And I'm going to actually put the control of my money back in my hands versus someone else's. And so anyone can do this. There really is so much hope in this, even though we're in scary times. So again, you can go to daveramsey.com/hope and go through that class for free.
Excellent information. Rachel Cruze, personal finance expert with Ramsey Solutions. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And for Fox News Now in Phoenix, Arizona, I'm Renee Nelson.